This is a Voyescape podcast. You can find all of our travel podcasts from around the world at voyescape.com.
Where the majesty of the Andes meets an endless wilderness in the southern part of South America. This week, we're going to talk about Patagonia. It's really a land of dreams. David, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Tim. How are you this week?
I'm very well. I'm very well. I'm in my happy place right now, which is on the water, sailing. So right now, I'm not quite sure where I am. I'm somewhere between somewhere between Trinidad, where we left about a day and a half ago. And tomorrow, I'm going to be in a place called Devil's Island, which is part of French Guyana, where famously the novel Papillon is set. And then after that, headed for the Amazon River in Brazil. So out back, it's a bit backlit, you can't really see, but there is a lot of ocean behind me. I don't know if it's Caribbean or Atlantic. We are somewhere in between on the beautiful, beautiful expedition ship Seabourn Venture. And I know you're traveling as well.
I am. I just came through Banff National Park yesterday and Yoho National Park, which I have to say, I think Yoho National Park is like highly underrated. So many people think of, when they think of the Canadian Rockies, they get to, maybe to Jasper or Banff or the Icefield Parkway in between, but a lot of people don't continue on to Yoho and on the BC side of the border. And like, spent a little bit of time in Field, beautiful little community there. Revelstoke National Park up the road too. So many great hiking trails, waterfalls, and rugged wilderness, and just some of the most stunning scenery anywhere in the world. And it's also a place that's not unlike where we're going on today's podcast, down at the far end of South America in Patagonia.
Absolutely. And the scenery is very similar. And I was in very similar climes last week. I was driving an RV from Vancouver to Calgary, where you are now, and beautiful mountains, beautiful snow-capped majesty. And I know that there's a lot of that in the Andes as well. So I'm very excited to talk about Patagonia. Where do you want to start? Where do you want to start this week? What do we want to talk
Let's talk a little bit about why you would go there. I mean, what's the motivator? What took you to Patagonia, and why would you say someone should look at it as somewhere to think about for one of their next trips?
So, I mean, I think it's just such a dramatic place. The Rockies are beautiful. I love the Rockies, but the Andes, especially in that part of the world, those jagged mountaintops and the beautiful, snow-capped scenery, it is absolutely unlike any other place on earth. And then I think you mix in this kind of Latin American culture. As we know, Patagonia is shared between Argentina and Chile. And so you get this kind of Latin American food and Latin American culture, which is, of course, so much different from what we have at home. For you, what makes you love this part of the world?
I mean, just the huge amount of sort of untouched wilderness, towering glaciers, Merino Glacier. I know somewhere we'll talk about as we get into the glacier. I think is really one of the wonders of the world. It's one of the few glaciers in the world that's actually still expanding rather than contracting. I think maybe even the only one that's still, and just phenomenal to see up close and in person. El Calafate, El Chiltan, just so much to do in the region in terms of outdoor activity, great hiking, great untouched remote wilderness, but also, as you say, the Argentinian culture. I mean, you've got fantastic food, you've got really friendly people, and just a ton to do.
And when we should note at this point that we're going to focus on the Argentinian side of Patagonia, and in a future episode we will focus on the Chilean side. And I know that you and I, we have different Patagonian experiences because we've been to different places in Patagonia, right? It's a big region, so it definitely offers options in terms of where you can visit and what you can do. And so for me, most of my examples are going to be from Bariloche, which is beautiful, slightly bizarre and amazing town in Patagonia, Argentinian Patagonia, built mostly by Germans. And so the town center looks Swiss German, and then you have chocolate shops and all this kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance because you're in South America, you're deep, deep, deep in South America, but you've got this place that looks maybe Bavarian, and then you've got chocolate shops and Swiss elements, but everybody's speaking Spanish. It's really a fascinating place, and I know you visited a couple other places in Argentina on in Patagonia.
Yeah, I was down in the far southern tip. I mean, getting quite close to Antarctica actually, and where some of the expedition ships and stuff will leave for Antarctica down in that region. Flew into El Calafate, which I think is kind of the main gateway airport if you want to go see Glaciers National Park and Perito Moreno Glacier. That's really kind of the main airport that you fly into from there. From there, we rented a car and drove to El Chaltén, and El Chaltén is really known for backcountry hiking. A lot of people who go do multi-day hikes throughout the Andes there, and just some beautiful trails and stunning mountain scenery there for sure.
Fantastic. And I will say, I've also visited the town of Ushuaia a number of times, or as the Argentinians say, Ushuaia. They would correct me if they were listening. And that is the main launch point for Antarctica. One of my favorite places on Earth. I know we're going to talk about that probably at some point on the podcast, but also a beautiful town. But for me, I think I'll mostly focus on Bariloche. So do you want to? Should we talk about things to do? Should we talk about places to stay? What do you want to chat about first?
Why don't we start with what to do?
So for me, I mean, I think I have to say, I mean, I've been 151 countries. I think the most beautiful viewpoint, honestly, that I've ever seen is at the top of, and I'm going to mispronounce this, Cerro Campanario, which is a chairlift that's just outside of Bariloche, and it is not attached to a ski hill. There's nothing else other than the view, but it takes you up to the mountaintop. And when I was in Bariloche earlier this year, we had a fresh snowfall. So actually, the trip was delayed by a day because the flight from Buenos Aires was canceled because the airport was closed because of the snow. So there was a fresh early season snowfall. And that, I mean, even though it was a little frustrating to have the flight canceled, going to the top of this mountaintop, being in the fresh snow, looking out in all directions and seeing mountains, just pristine snow on top, lakes that are just, cobalt, sapphire, blue. I think it was one of the most beautiful, it definitely was the most beautiful view that I've ever seen. So that is definitely a place that I absolutely loved. We went up there, we spent hours up there. It was incredible. And then I'll just say one other thing to do outside Bariloche or in Bariloche, which is, Bariloche is a beautiful place to walk around and spend time, go to the chocolate shops, great restaurants. But it's really even better to get outside of the town. So we rented a car. I was with my sister's family. We had a wonderful time. And we went on one of the shorter circuits, which is the Circuito Chico, which I think means like small circuit. And it was just 17 miles, which is, what, about 25, 26 kilometers. And again, lakes, mountains, beautiful overlooks, and this amazing grand hotel, sort of like we were talking about the Rockies and Banff Springs Hotel, sort of their version of it called Chow Chow, and just went and walked around there and enjoyed the views. So even though it's wonderful to be in Bariloche, it's also wonderful to get outside. So what about you? Let's talk about some of your experiences.
For sure. And one of the things I was going to come back to, I mean, you talked a little bit about driving around the region. And one of the things that struck me is when we flew in, we also rented a car when we got there and did a fair bit of driving around the region. And how easy it is to drive there, right? Like for us, this was our first trip ever to South America. So we were going to a completely new part of the world. You're always kind of not sure how it's going to be renting a car, getting out and driving on your own. So you're a little apprehensive about it. But I mean, showed up at the airport. It was all the North American rental companies were there. I think we rented through Hertz or somebody. They had our car waiting. We were out in a few minutes, and like all the highways and stuff were really well developed and through the national parks. beautiful for driving. So we spent a lot of time doing that, just getting out and exploring on our own and driving through the mountains and doing day hikes in various places. A lot of day hikes, as I say, around El Chaltan, which is a small mountain village. It's probably about if I remember correctly, about a 2.5 hour, 3 hour drive from El Calafat, and beautiful drive as you're going through. You're going to see a lot of animals. You're going to see stunning scenery. And then you're going to find hikes ranging from very easy. We did probably a 3 hour, fairly light hike, but you could also do multi-day hikes. There were climbers there. There was a lot of outdoor outfitters and stuff in the region as well. So a lot from a hiking perspective. But actually one of our favorite things to do is more of a cultural experience that we booked through Airbnb experiences, where a local had was doing weekly empanada classes out of this sort of cabin hut house that he lives up in the mountains. It was built by his parents, many, many years ago. This stone and wood cabin up in the mountains we went up to. It was quite isolated by itself. And we spent, the whole evening with him learning how to make empanadas, eating empanadas, and drinking a lot of Argentinian and Chilean wine, and finding out all about him sailing.
Yeah. Argentina really is the land of empanadas, and it really is the land of really fantastic domestic wine, Malbec, and all those great varieties. So that sounds absolutely wonderful. And I guess now that we're talking about it, do you want to talk a little bit about the food, about some of the places that you like to eat?
Yeah, the food was phenomenal, and there's two places that really jump out to me. One was in El Calafat, right in the center of the city, and you cannot miss it if you walk through. It's a very new, modern-looking restaurant, a parrilla, one of the traditional Argentinian, sort of barbecue grilled meat places. And as you walk by, it's got glass windows and the fire pits and carcasses of all kinds of animals being smoked and roasted and grilled over top. Called Casamiro Parrilla. And their Patagonian lamb was amazing. Just like a really rustic atmosphere, great for kind of warming up after a day of exploring. And then they had Argentinian dancers and music, and that came in throughout the evening as well. So that was a great experience.
Amazing.
And then the other one, I believe, was in El Chaltan, called Isabel Cochina al Disco. And they make a traditional Patagonian meal called a disco, which is made in a cast iron pan over fire. And again, so you've got a lot of kind of grilled meats, vegetables, full of flavor, very hearty dish after a day of hiking through the mountains. It was a great place to stop by.
Absolutely. And Argentina really is the land of steak. I don't know if it's still true, but at one point, Argentinians ate more beef per capita than any other country, on earth, and they really know how to cook a really good steak. I once wrote an article for the American Airlines magazine about Buenos Aires and finding the perfect steak in Buenos Aires, and I'll tell you, it was really tough because there were so many amazing places to eat steak on a parrilla. And so I was going to mention that as well, but I won't because in Bariloche, walk out the door of your hotel, turn left, turn right. Within a couple blocks, you're going to find a place for a great steak, and can't recommend it more. In Bariloche, the place that we kept going back to when I was there with my sister's family was it was up on the mountainside. So basically, Bariloche is built on the flanks of a mountain, and you go uphill. Every block takes you further and further uphill, and we had to go up 2-3 blocks to go to this place called Wesley, which was a microbrewery, and it was our local. It was our hangout. So we would go. They brew their own beer. They have their own brewery. And then they did this kind of elevated pub fare. So we would go there. And it was just, it wasn't anything fancy. It was hamburgers, but really good hamburgers and really good. I think the kids often got these kind of cheese fries. And one thing I loved there was they let the local street dogs. There's a lot of street dogs in Bariloche, but they're very well behaved. They're very nice dogs. And they would let the dogs come in. And as long as they behave themselves, the dogs were sort of circulating with the people. And we had one called chocolate that was our favorite, and chocolate would come over and visit our table always. But great beer, good food, and just a really wonderful atmosphere. It felt like it was in the trees because it was, halfway up the hillside. And I just want to give a little shout out to a place called El Tronador. I'm not sure how many of our listeners will actually make it there. It was on the Circuito Chico, that little road trip circuit outside of Bariloche. We were going to have lunch at Xiao Xiao, which is, would have been a fancy, expensive, probably quite delicious lunch. And instead, my niece on her phone, she found this place, and it was local, rustic, it looked like somebody had built the place with their own two hands. And we ended up having just a wonderful lunch there. Everything made from scratch, everything local. Because of the recent snowfall, they had made a stew, and we spoke with the owner, and she said, I looked out the door this morning and I saw that there was snow, and I thought people would like stew, so they made a stew. And it was just, the food was absolutely delicious. The service was excellent. It's really a tucked away place that you might not expect. So if you're anywhere near Xiao Xiao, go to El Tronador. It's really a fantastic place.
With the sort of German influence and Swiss influence, do you see a lot of
you
Swiss
do.
and German
Yeah,
food
for
and stuff in
For sure.
Bariloche as well?
It's not
Yeah.
hard to find a good sausage. And I mean, I think, with the Argentinian obsession with meat, and then this German Swiss influence, you can find a schnitzel for sure. You can find good bratwurst, all that kind of stuff. So that is definitely something you can also find. We were there kind of in the shoulder season, so some of the better restaurants for some of those foods were closed at the time. But it is not hard to find in Bariloche. And I love a good brat. So yeah.
Any places that jump out in terms of where to
Yeah,
stay?
so I'm just gonna give a shout out to just one place, which is where I stayed. And again, not not a 5-star hotel. It's called Hotel Cristal. Absolutely loved it. Right in the middle of town. Not expensive. I mean, I think rates, shoulder season rates were around $100 a night. But they had a crackling wood-fired fireplace in the lobby. They had an indoor pool, which is great because we had this rainy day that we didn't know what to do. So that was perfect to go to the indoor pool. A block in each direction, you could find great chocolate shops, and just nice rooms, just a really solid option. So Hotel Cristal, right downtown in Bariloche. What about you?
We stay primarily at Airbnbs throughout the region. There were a lot of good choices for Airbnbs, so I would definitely recommend checking out that, and a great way, as I say, to sort of connect with some of the local culture in the region as well. We did stay at one great hotel. It was a place called Design Suites in Calafat, who I believe it's part of the Design collection of One Value hotels, or maybe it's part of Small Luxury Hotels of the World, one of the two. But they had, just panoramic views of the landscapes, really modern design focused, all throughout the hotel, but certainly your rooms. They had great pool relaxation areas, saunas and steam rooms, that sort of stuff, and good restaurant as well. It was a bit kind of off by itself. There wasn't, it was in the town of El Calafat, like it wasn't too far out of town, but it was quite kind of off on its own from the rest of the city. So if you wanted to go to other restaurants and stuff, it was a bit of driving distance, but just a really, really cool from a design perspective, and great service and stuff there. That one, if I remember correctly, ran in the range of about $300 USD a night and up from there, depending on, I'm sure like everywhere it varies from season to season and room type and stuff as well. But that was about what we were paying, I think, when we were there.
Fantastic. Any, as we kind of wrap it up, any final thoughts, any hidden gems, anything you want to mention on our way out?
Well, it's not so much a hidden gem, but I would say it's definitely a can't miss, which is the Perito Moreno Glacier. It really is a must see, and I would really recommend doing. There's a number of tour companies that do boat rides that take you tour boats right to the base of the glacier, and you're seeing the ice calf off the glacier. You can even go up and walk on the glacier and do an ice trekking tour up there as well. One thing to note on that, we weren't able to do that because one of our two kids, I think, was under the age limit at the time. I think it's either 12 or 13 years old you need to be able to do that trip. but we did do the boat ride, get right up the glacier there, and then there's an interpretive center. They will tell you all about the local wildlife as well as the glacier itself, and just some stunning hiking trails that give you various different vantage points and viewpoints of the glacier, and it really is a pretty dramatic and stunning natural phenomena that definitely is worth the trip for
Absolutely.
sure.
That sounds absolutely amazing. I'll just quickly mention, I love to do an Estancia visit. There's these sort of ranches that are just outside of town. And again, great. They'll usually serve you a meal, give you a bit of a tour. You can do horseback riding, things like that. Excellent red wine, excellent meat, and a little bit of a chance to just interact with Argentinian cowboys and get a little sense of what it's like to be in that world. So cultural, and then also delicious. So that's one of my favorite things to do. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, a few great recommendations for the regions. Bariloche definitely somewhere I want to go back and check out. I really want to go spend some time on the Chilean side of Patagonia as well, and do some more exploring there. Lots to see there, and maybe we can do another episode on that in the future, because I know you spent a little bit of time on
Yes,
that side of the
I've been
border
to
as
Port
well.
Natales and Torres del Paine National Park, and done the Chilean fjords by ship and helicopter, and so for sure, for a future episode, very much looking forward to that. So, but I think that probably pretty much does it for Patagonia on the Argentinian side. A lot of great suggestions, and as always, great to chat with you, David.
Great chat with you too, Tim. We'll definitely put some of the places that we've talked about throughout the episode in the show notes. And then we're working on building out more detailed guides for all the places that we're talking about this season that we're going to put up on the website as we go throughout the year. So certainly come back and check our website at voyescape.com, where we'll have more detailed itineraries and more detailed explanations of how to plan your own trip to some of the places that we're talking about on the podcast
Absolutely.
as well.
Sounds good. Looking forward to chatting with you next week.
Thanks, Tim.